Hi, everybody. Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel. Going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of October 20th through 26th. We got a lot going on, and it's all tied into this new moon at 29 degrees Libra tomorrow on Tuesday, but also the sun going into Scorpio this week. And we have a grand trine next weekend with in water with Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn. So a real nice way to end the week. Um, but yeah, and there's a couple other bigger long-term things that are changing this week. Neptune is actually going to retrograde back into Pisces on Wednesday, and I talked about that at length in the monthly, so I'm not going to go through that again. You can go back through the monthly. It is also on Thursday the exact Jupiter Chiron square, which I also talked about in the monthly, talked about last week when the sun went into a T square, and I will rehash that again with the new moon going into it. So that's like, some of the things I got to talk about, a lot of stuff actually. So just real quick first, the Astrological Winds channel is a free video blog that I do on YouTube, and I've been doing it on YouTube, I think, for about 6 years now. So if you like what you see, and you have a YouTube account, I'd really like you to become a follower. And if you become a follower, please don't forget to turn on your notifications so you know when the blog is posted, which is every week, usually Sunday night these days when it comes up. Also, remember, it was a podcast long before it was a YouTube channel, so it is available, an exact audio copy of the YouTube channel video is available as a podcast still, and it's distributed by Buzzsprout. Just hit your on your phone your app for podcasts and look up Astrological Winds channel. It should come up on a number of different sites, and you can listen to it audio that way, and then for yourself, maybe listen to while you're driving to work or some other way of listening to it. Than having to watch a video. Also, Astrological Winds channel does have its own Instagram page. That's another place where I put the link every week. You can hit it there. And the one other place you can always find the link, and the past blogs too, for months going back, is on my website, www.astrologicalwinds.com. And that also has my menu for all my professional services. I've been a professional astrologer for over 20 years after 7 years of schooling and training in that. I'd love to do your chart or somebody else's chart. In fact, that's the best way you can support me when you're ready to have that done. So check my website out for that info. And yeah, and remember, I really ask, since the blog is free, you can give a donation if you'd like, but since it is free, if you can figure out another person to pass the link along to, I love the way it grows when it's just word of mouth, because it finds the people who are really interested and really want to check it out. So I really appreciate that. And remember, if you don't know astrology well, don't get lost on the terms. Just listen to the interpretations. That's what's important, right? That you know what's going on. So like I said, Tuesday, here it is. We've got a new moon at the 29th degree of Libra. So that's where you want to look in your chart for where 29 degrees Libra is, and that's where you're going to feel this new moon's energy. And normally the new moon in Libra is really sweet, actually, but it's locked in to a lot of the outer planets, and that's going to bring a lot of challenges up. In fact, 3 different aspects really going on, in one that it just came out of, one that it's in the middle of as the new moon is perfecting, and one that's going to happen right after it. So, and so, like, you can see it's coming out of a T square with what I talked about a little bit last week, where the moon and sun are now opposite Chiron and Eris, and in both square Jupiter, in that Jupiter Chiron square that I was talking about, and right in the middle of a yod with a quincunx to Uranus, a quincunx to Neptune and Saturn, and then the next aspect will be a square to Pluto. So, like, really just a lot of intense energy coming in from those outer planets. Very complex, very complicated, very critical new moon when it's at the 29th degree, because it's like when the planets get to those end of those signs, it's kind of like, hey, have we learned the lessons of what this is? It's really critical time to see. We're going to get tested to see if we do. And if we don't, we're going to have to relearn the lessons. We're going to have to kind of go back and repeat the class, so to speak, you know. So in Libra, you know, just the purity of the new moon itself. In Libra, that's all about trying to make connections with others. You know, it's all about trying to make an emotional connection with others because that's what feels good. Trying to be in harmony with others, trying to be at peace with others, trying to be in a balance with others, trying to be really in a calm, flowing kind of way with others. So that's how we, you know, what we really feel. You know, we want to make a connection with this Libra energy, and we want it to be something that we feel good about, something that we're feeling harmonious about. Now, Libra also brings in like a really good eye for creative energy, like how to use different forms, how to use color, how to use shapes, and things like that, and put it all together into a very harmonious environment or creation. So we can be very good at creating beautiful spaces too, right? You know, but it's all about always trying to seek rapport with others and trying to create harmony with others so we can be very charming, we can be very graceful. And when people are not getting along, that's when the Libra moon gets triggered. That's when we feel that, oh, inside what's going on. And what we try to do in the influence of the Libra moon is try to figure out a way of making peace. It can be a very diplomatic energy. It can be very willing to give up some things to get some things. And in today's environment, with a lot of things being so extreme and stuck in one way or another, there's a lot to learn from this critical new moon, right? About being able to sit down with others, even people we may be upset with, and try to start going, you know, overlooking what we see as their faults and trying to find some common ground that we can start to build some kind of peace out of, you know. So it's a very, very interesting that this is critical degree has come up at a time where the world seems to really be at odds with one another, where everybody seems to want to pick a side and have an enemy, an open enemy. You know, Libra represents open enemies just as much as it represents alliances. It's the other, you know. So it can be the other as being an alliance, or it can be the other as being an open enemy. But you know, it's a very, very social new moon. It wants us to go out. It wants us to, you know, make beauty out of our relationships, you know, and but there's a lot of challenges that are built into this new moon. And if it was, you know, unaspected and I'd be like, okay, you know, this can be really good, but there's a lot of stuff going on. So I want to, you know, like I said, there's three different clusters of energy that are affecting this. And one of them it already has gone through, and that is this cardinal T square with the square to Jupiter and the opposition to the Chiron Eris conjunction. And I talked a little bit about it last week as the sun had already locked into this. And remember, what it's being driven by right now is this Jupiter square Chiron and Eris, and that to me, I've talked about it a few times this year because it's a big aspect for the year. Really, is that people seeing that their belief systems, the things they value, are not really fitting well in with society, that there's all this chaos attacking, changes attacking those things, and people feeling really hurt by that, like they feeling, you know, disenchanted, in pain, in agony, even about like their values not and their beliefs like not aligning well with what's going on in society. And like I said last week, then you get one of the personal planets involved, the sun last week, and now this week we've got the new moon involved too. And that's when people really want to act out on it, right? They really all of a sudden like want to take some kind of action about this, and I talked about it once again, last week, how people, they get very, really choose sides with this and get very self-righteous, get very preachy, get very arrogant about what they believe in and try to strong arm it, try to push it onto others. And like, we can see this happening in the US where, we have literally a government shutdown because two sides won't even sit down at the table and, and negotiate with one another. And then we see it filtering out into society where we have massive protests going on against, the current administration and the way things are going, and then other people saying, they literally don't care that these protests are going on, people that are in power, that, so like everybody trying to push and being very like intolerant of one another. And yet that's what I talked about last week, is when you get the Chiron opposite the sun last week and now the sun and moon, it actually shows that yes, people are being really hurt by this, like emotionally in their lives. It's affecting people, like these differences in opinion. They could be in your personal life, could be in this, the political theater that's going on, belief systems, whatever it may be. Yes, people are being wounded. They're being feeling really sensitive right now, being hurt. But that same sensitivity that Chiron brings in can give us the ability, especially with a Libra moon and sun going on, to see both sides of an issue, to actually become tolerant enough, especially with Jupiter in Cancer. That can bring in tolerance. That can be like, hey, we are all part of the same family or tribe or group. And, ultimately, even if we have differences, despite our differences, right? There's a song written by someone once called Despite Our Differences, I believe, right? And so, like, like, this is a time where we do have an opportunity to see through some of this stuff, right? And the Jupiter can give us, can help us have a positive attitude, but that's what we really need to do. So like, if we don't use this critical time to try to become more tolerant and sit down and hammer out agreements in our personal life or in the world, then we are probably going to get left in the back of the class. And what happens with the Libra energy when it doesn't get peace and balance and harmony? It becomes a fighter. Like I said to you guys last week, when Libra is backed into a corner because it really believes in what it believes in and what that peace and harmony is, it can become one of the most formidable enemies you have. It's like a badger that's been cornered all of a sudden. Like I said before, some of the greatest generals in history were Libras because they really believed in what they were fighting for. So like, that is what, can end up happening in this situation. Are we gonna try to become more tolerant, try to sit down and negotiate, bring harmony and peace, or are we gonna feel like we're so backed into the corner that we're gonna become like this ruthless fighting energy? So what, once again, the open end of this T-square is Capricorn. And what's that saying? In times of chaos, in times of great pain and change that's affecting lives and affecting people's emotions, that we need to look to the past, that we need to look to people and things and forms that were wiser and build some structure around that brings stability to very unstable times. So, how are we going to do that? Is the next question, because it doesn't seem like right now, in the greater scheme of things, that the world is really able to do that, and that's what we're in the middle of right now. The present, this new moon is right in the middle of a yod, once again, among Uranus sextiling the Neptune Saturn conjunction, and both of them quincunxing the new moon, and which is the sun and moon together. And as I've said it before, Yods are the most fatalistic grand aspect pattern. They're the aspect pattern that says, you can't get there alone. So I'm going to push you. They're like a finger pointing in a direction. Is the finger of fate, the finger of spirit, the finger of God, pushing us in a certain direction, right? And so like this is what we're in the middle of right now, okay? This is the energy that is saying you guys can't handle this situation, whether it's in your personal life, whether it's in the real world. So I'm going to bring you to a place where you need to get to because you can't make the situations happen by yourself. And so, in a way, what I always recommend with yachts is like strap in, enjoy the ride, because this is a hand of fate. And to top that off, all the planets involved are transpersonal planets, planets that we can't see with the naked eye, that we're not even aware of physically with our eyes that they exist. We know they exist because we saw them with the telescope, but like they actually exist more in our superconscious. And the transpersonal planets, the planets beyond Saturn, they're operating on what we call an evolutionary scale. They're bringing humanity and the earth and the solar system and all of life that's nexus here near us to a place where it needs to go. And it's way bigger than anybody's individual life. So it can feel like, wow, yeah, things can spin out of control when this energy from like these outer planets are coming up. It's like all of a sudden, whoa, this is like fate. We're being pushed along. And with all this energy mixed up of Saturn and Uranus and Neptune, I've been saying it over and over. I think what's going on here is that we're once again, Neptune, we're not seeing our ideals align with reality right now. There's a lot of separation between what we'd like to ideally see and what we'd like to ideally live and how we'd like to ideally feel and what's going on in reality, right? And it's causing a lot of disheartening energy, a lot of discouraging energy, a lot of doubt, a lot of confusion, right? And then part of us is just, okay, well, what I got to do is try to control things then. I need to come back in and get control of the situation, but but there's instability going on. Instability means that it's almost impossible to control the situation. And not only that, it's tearing us up in the middle too, because part of us, the side that's fearful, is wanting to run back to that side that's like, oh, I've got to get control of this situation. I've got to shut these things down. I've got to separate myself from these things. And what that may be doing is just shutting off the changes that we need to let go and let happen. And then part of us is, yeah, I do want to see these changes happen. So it's like a very odd feeling inside where it's like, okay, things seem to be spinning out of control. I need to get control, but yet at the same time, I actually want to see things change. So that's why the yod, and there can be a lot of confusion and we're not sure what we want to do. And Libra energy can be really indecisive too. So all of a sudden the yod's like, okay, I'm going to have to take over, get in the back seat here and let me do the driving, because, because right now we're not really clear of where our destination is. And so like this thing's like, okay, like I may have a better idea than you guys about where we need to go, but it can feel really chaotic, you know? It can feel depressing. It can feel sensitive all simultaneously. And we're all trying to find some way to relieve the stress. And it actually, with the yod and the quincunxes, shows that yes, separations may need to occur, physical ones, abstract ones. In order for us to open up intuitively about these energies, things that, that we may be like that they're trying to give us a message on the intuitive level, on the mystical level, on the spiritual level. And we may be ignoring this because we're trying to deal with reality or trying to push some changes. And like instead, this is like, hey, if you continue to ignore this stuff, it's going to continue to sap away your strength, your beliefs, your confidence, you know? So this can make us really, like, this energy can make us really resistant and rebellious at the same time. It's such an odd mix of energy, you know? And here we are, like trying to figure out, how can I feel rooted in when all this stuff is going on at the same time? How can I feel rooted when my ideals aren't working out? This is just something like where no one, even though it's happening on large scales that we can see this, in society, in transpersonal planets affecting, it's like no one really gets a get out of jail free card. It's affecting everybody in the world. There are major shifts going on in the world right now, and it's hard to trust where it's going. And that's what we really need to do. We need to realize that, we're going to be swept away on some changes right now, and it's not really clear where that's all going. But like right now, this configuration shows that, a lot of the decisions right now are completely out of our hands at this point, that, we're just going to be pushed along. So really, that's my best suggestion, with this kind of energy, is to just like say to yourself, yeah, this is going to take us to somewhere better that we or me or myself can't get to without it helping me along. And I think what's really interesting is the last aspect, the next aspect the new moon's going to make is a square to Pluto. And that is just really, really intense energy. It shows that we're under incredible emotional stress, not only on the inside, pressuring ourselves, but the forces of the world on the outside, the events, especially people who have more power than us, authorities, people like the government, stressing us out. And this can get us so emotionally worked up. We get very compulsive with our energy. We get like, subconscious energies kick in. We can get very, very aggressive. We can get very much into power struggles with others. We can get ruthless with our energy and attacking one another. We can easily become a victim, or we can be the perpetrator, or we can end up being both. And you can see once again how this is being played out, especially in the United States during this government shutdown. Neither side willing to give up, the ultimate power struggle going on. So, and what this moon Pluto is saying is there's stuff we need to purge out. It's just not working for us anymore. And if we don't, these continual power struggle behaviors are going to end up being our own self-destruction. Ultimately, we need to separate ourselves from things that are having us act compulsively, having us get into struggles, having us get into ruthless behavior, having us get obsessed with things, and purge that stuff out. And once we do that, then maybe we can allow in the space for the Libra energy to come in and be like, okay, we all need to own up to, what our part is in this, and be able to sit down and make some agreements. Because right now, obviously the world is very much on a brink of things. And if that Libra energy continues to act in that defensive way, it just can continue to be nonstop war going on, basically. War in our lives, war in the world, And, note how they reflect one another too, as above, so below. These transpersonal planets have their own agenda for humanity, and we don't know what that is consciously. So the best thing to do is to allow them to take us to the ride where we need to go, and to allow new changes in. But we have to purge out our old attitudes, our old beliefs, especially if we want to see our ideals and the changes we want brought into society, and if we want to have some balance and harmony, even with people who we don't normally get along with. Otherwise, we're constantly going to be taken into the lower forms of this energy, and it can be painful. Pushing beliefs onto others can be painful and cause chaos, right? And then we watch our own beliefs get like rolled over, and we want change to happen, yet we're afraid change is going to happen simultaneously. And then it puts us into an emotionally deep, intensely deep place. So we really need to get a grip on all this stuff. So that's what this new moon's about. Like I said, look at your chart where 29 Libra is, and that's where you'll see that area of your life is where this new energy is going to come in. And it likely has to do with relationships, possibly enemies, allies, partners, friends, things like that, energy that's surrounding that. And then on Wednesday, the sun does go into Scorpio. So that means we're in the middle of the autumn in the northern hemisphere. We're in the middle of the winter in the southern hemisphere, right? And, Scorpio is a fixed water sign. We get really emotionally deep. It's very complex subconscious energy that we start to feel when Scorpio comes up. So people kind of get quieter, they get a little bit more secretive, they get more into a self-reflective mode. There's a lot of thinking that's going on the inside. And the problem with Scorpio is it can get very obsessive about especially things that that it's not resolved with, that there's anger about, that there's resentment about, and then when it does, it can be very ruthless and unforgiving. It can be, really a force to deal with. But, that same intense energy that can come out that way really wants to connect deeply with certain people that we love. It's a time where we really pare down who we want to focus our energy on. Like instead of having a wider net like Libra, we now want to focus in on people that we feel we're having a deeper emotional connection with. And we are, a lot more intense because we are a lot more sensitive. And Scorpio with that fixed water can be very protective of that. It's the scorpion, and they've got that hard outer shell, and they will strike at you, if they're feeling like they're angry or resentful. It also brings up a natural love in anything that's secret or mysterious, the psychic world, horror, macabre, things like that, criminal world, the underworld, and the human mind too, subconscious psychology, things like that. But it's really easy to misunderstand people with Scorpio because of that secretive energy. It feels like everybody's holding on to something and everyone's a little bit quieter. So we don't trust others as much, and they don't trust us as much unless we're really willing to show them something deep. We don't let people in as much. We become a lot more dedicated to our family or friends, people that we're really deep with, which is great. It's a great time to form deeper alliances that can last, forever, basically. We're not interested in superficial connection with this energy, but it can definitely bring up trust issues with people. There's no question about it. It's a very vibrant, dynamic energy. There's a lot of sexual energy involved, it has a lot to do with reproduction, with death and birth. So it's a time when we do release our emotions. If we can find healthy ways to do that, it can bring in incredible creativity into the mind that we can really work with. So real deep energy there. And then Friday and Saturday, the weekend, we get some really interesting energy with Mercury. First, it'll actually quincunx the Chiron Eris conjunction, but then it locks into a water grand trine with Jupiter and Saturn, because Mercury's in Scorpio too, if you remember. So that's really useful energy. A grand trine is literally the best grand aspect pattern there is, and so I think what's going to happen first, the Mercury Chiron hits Friday, and this will give us like attitude adjustment, basically a serious attitude adjustment where we can release some thoughts and beliefs that may be blocking us from me being able to move forward in certain situations. So what may have happened is like we may go through this new moon and see by the weekend, oh yeah, these are some things that I need to let go of. And once we do that, that allows the grand trine to kick in, which, like I said, is so positive, and in water, really flows great together. And what's great, Jupiter and Saturn are kind of opposite energies, basically. Jupiter is, the one that expands, brings in growth, and Saturn's the one that restricts and brings in structure. So when they're working together in a positive aspect, there is just a great, great flow. And the three of these things together, we can come up with some amazing plans, a great, great wide vision, large vision, very tolerant, taking, and we're willing to sit down and work on every single detail of that plan to make sure that works out right. We can sink really deeply into this, especially with all the water energy and the Scorpio energy. So this can be a deeply emotionally satisfying energy for us so that we can organize really well, build something really solid for the future. We have the discipline to make our visions come into reality, and so this is really excellent for using on business situations. If you have any kind of business situations where this is fitting energy, you really have a favorable time to work with this. The mind is really, really sharp with this energy. It can see the details of what it needs to be done. It can see what needs to be tied in. It's not stuck. It's willing to be open, willing to take in more ideas to enlarge the vision even more. So also great for studying, really great for like deep studying and really understanding what you're taking in. It's the mind of a genius, this energy working together. It's very, very serious in its attitude too. It wants to, so that's good. It really wants to see something. It's willing to take on any problem and until it overcomes any obstacle in its way, willing to even look at, oh yeah, there's a mistake here, I can correct this, instead of taking a bad attitude about it and getting defensive. And a great balance too between taking risks and being conservative. So knowing where the right place is to balance that of taking abstract ideas and turning them into concrete forms and results. Very balanced with our communications, where we really speak mainly of things that are really important to us, not willing to waste time on superficial things. And definitely a really good time too to get advice from people that we respect, that we think are an authority or wiser than us. So this is just a great weekend to work on any kind of big plan or vision that you have, whether it's business or any other thing. We can get so deeply into it, and it may be something that gets hatched under this new moon after we go through all of this and maybe come out the other side and say like, oh yeah, this is what I need to adjust in my beliefs and attitudes. This is what I need to let go of. This is what I need to take in. I can find the balance between change and wanting some kind of stability, and it can appeal to some of my ideals, and then I can really sink deeply into this. So that's what I got for this week. Really ends up in a really positive note. I think the new moon's definitely gonna bring us a lot of intense stuff. We can see that in the world all around us. Don't be one of the ones that gets left behind. Try to not get stuck into that spiral of being cornered and perceiving the other as the enemy. Try to be able to sit down and work things out and be more tolerant of one another is what a lot of this is about. All right, next week, you guys, let's see what we got. We got some Mars action next week for sure, and then Mercury's going to go into Sag, And I know Mercury will start slowing down once it goes into Sag, because that is when it's going to go retrograde at the end of November again. So I'll probably look at the month of November too. Yeah, I will. I'll not only do next week's astrology for the week, I'll probably look at the long-term November outer planet stuff too. But yeah, Mercury going into Sag, so it's going to be busy hitting a lot of those outer planets. And it looks like there is some Mars and Venus action going on too. So looks like it'll be a pretty active week. And like I said, I'll review November too. So that's what I got for you guys this week. This is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Wings Channel. You are going to pass the link along to somebody else you know, even if you've done it before. Please do it again. If you'd like to give a currency donation, no amount is too small. It actually costs me money to put the blog out. My Cash App is $Matthew, 2 T's, Lawton, Lauten, Venmo at Matthew, 2 T's, hyphen in the middle, Lauten. Like I said, no amount is too small. Best way to support me is to go to my website, astrologicalwinds.com. Take a look at my professional menu. When you are ready to have your reading done, or somebody else that you know, you can reference to me. I've been doing charts professionally for over 20 years after 7 years of training. So many clients over the years. Your chart never leaves you. You spend money on so many other things that are gone instantly. This is an investment in you. It's not the same as getting a computer printout or reading a book or having a friend who dabbles, but getting one by a professional. You're going to get the holistic thing. You'll be able to see the patterns. You'll be able to work with them, become more self-empowered. And, if you know your chart, I recommend every year around your birthday getting a predictive reading done, so I can look at the next year for you and tell you what kind of energies are working in your chart. Also do all kinds of other readings, guys. Relationships, relocations, children's, elections for timing. Check the website out. I also do stuff for groups. If you're looking for a workshop, a lecture, a class, mini readings. Also, if you're a beginner student, I have some podcasts, beginner student classes available. I'm always looking. If we have enough students, we can do a live class too. So anyone who's interested in that, let me know. Remember, all the blogs are there on the website too. Please check it out. And next week I'll see y'all, and we'll take a look not only at the week, but I think we'll take a look at the month of November too. Take care now. This is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds Channel signing off.